This time I start the video at the corner of Plymouth and Grand River. This will be video number 23 in my Detroit series where I go through the entire city. Most of this area of town is a shell of its former self, just like most other areas that we've seen in Detroit. However, there is a unique neighborhood that we go through midway in this video that stands out from the rest of the area. Meanwhile, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to drop a like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already, as doing all of those things helps these videos destroy the evil monster that is the YouTube algorithm. Also make sure to hit that notification bell so that you can be notified every time that I upload a new video. Last but not least, if you can't get enough of me on here, you can always go follow me on my other social media accounts, and those links are below. Well, the area of town that we're in for this video is just north of the suburb of Dearborn. But it's obviously had a large presence in the larger Metro Detroit area for all of our lifetimes. And same with General Motors and Chrysler. Chrysler, by the way, is now owned by Stellantis, which is headquartered overseas, but the three companies make up what most people call the Big Three, as in the American Big Three automakers. And over time, General Motors went from being the largest automaker in the world to being ranked as number 6 today. Ford is number 4, and surprisingly, Stellantis is ahead of both of them at number 3. Finishing out the top 6, as of today's current ranking, is Volkswagen at number 1, Toyota at number 2, and Honda at number 5. So, the Big Three are most definitely still the Big Three, and there's not a single market in the world that has a stronger automobile industry presence than what Metro Detroit has, but the dominance of the auto industry that Detroit has had over the years has faded some. Metro Detroit also has done a good job at diversifying its economy to where it's not as dependent on the auto industry as it used to be, while at the same time keeping the auto industry as an identity for the market. And you don't have near the amount of manufacturing jobs in Detroit as you used to during the heyday, but you have a strong concentration of white-collar jobs within the auto industry out in the suburbs, and General Motors obviously being headquartered in downtown Detroit. More on that in a minute, as right now we're heading west on West Chicago, and we're in the 48204 zip code, which is pretty small in area when compared to other Detroit zip codes, as you can see here. Well, this zip code is home to 22,000 people, and the median household income is an extremely low number at $27,000 per year. Only 10% of adults 25 and older hold a bachelor's degree or higher, and the median value of owner-occupied housing units is $41,000, while the poverty rate is 40%. That poverty rate is about 10% higher than what we see for the city as a whole on average, and the median household income is significantly lower as well. So from an economic standpoint, this zip code is not one of the best areas of the city. So now going back to what I was saying, the auto industry today continues to be the economic identity of the Detroit market. But you can also see what I'm talking about further when you look at the population history for Detroit compared to Metro Detroit. You can see here that Detroit hit a peak population of nearly 2 million people back in 1950, yet today, the city has only 600,000 people left. And that number continues to decline. Whereas with Metro Detroit, you don't see a population loss for the entire area like you do for the city. Instead, the population of Metro Detroit has stayed stagnant since 1970. By the way, when people refer to Detroit as the Detroit market or Metro Detroit, they're referring to the metro area with 4.3 million people, not the city with only 600,000. And the metro area as a whole is doing much better economically than what most people would think, given all the negative and exaggerated media headlines that are out there about the city proper, and that's something that I don't think gets pointed out enough. The reason for the strong difference between the city and the suburbs, in my opinion, is mostly due to a long trend of segregation, and you can hear me talk about that more throughout other videos that I've made on Detroit, and all of those can be found in my Detroit playlist, which is linked down below. I'll briefly go over other reasons for Detroit's decline later in the video, as there's no quick and easy way to mention everything, and like I said, I go in depth on each issue through other videos in my Detroit playlist. So with that said, there will probably be some people in the comments of this video saying,
"It's not only segregation,"
or
"It's not only political corruption."
But anyway, when it comes to segregation, white flight started in the 1950s, and the reason why it's called white flight is because before the 1950s, there was a movement called the Great Migration, where African Americans moved north from the southern states to seek a better future. Cities at the time, such as Detroit, Cleveland, Flint, Toledo, Pittsburgh, Erie, Buffalo, and Chicago, offered an abundance of manufacturing jobs, hence why it's called the Rust Belt. Well, those jobs didn't require a college education, and during those times it was rare for black families to acquire a college degree due to a strongly racist society back then, making it darn near impossible for that to happen. So those types of jobs were attractive to them. Even if a black family could afford paying for a college tuition and a student had good enough grades in high school, it wasn't a guarantee that they would get in based on the sole reason that they were black. And that's just how society was back then. But over time, we've seen many black families be able to get themselves out of poverty due to our society being more accepting of multiple races and religions in the modern era. Well, anyway, during the 1950s, when this was happening, white families were largely afraid of the abundance of black families that were moving into Detroit. That, along with the fact that there was all of this cheap land right outside of Detroit that could be developed, encouraged the white flight movement. Taxes were also lower outside of the city limits. With all of those factors, all of the land outside of the Detroit city limits ended up getting developed, and now it's called the suburbs. Now, it wasn't only white flight that moved these white families out of the city, as the automobile and the construction of freeways made that process easier as well. Along with the people moving out of the city, you also had the auto manufacturers building newer facilities in the suburbs to escape the unions and the high taxes. Now, before you jump into the comments section and say,
The unions have control over the assembly plants in the suburbs too, you don't know what you're talking about."
The thing with the UAW is that originally, the UAW gained membership by going to individual auto plants. So early on, the UAW went to the original plants, such as the River Rouge plant or the Highland Park Ford plant, for example, to gain membership. The way that the auto manufacturers would fight back early on would be to decentralize their operations by building newer facilities out in the suburbs. And eventually, yes, the new factories out in the suburbs gained UAW membership as well, but the point is that that's how the domino effect of the city of Detroit losing all of these manufacturing jobs started. Also, before you head to the comments and say that I'm not for workers' rights, I believe originally that the union was a great thing, because when you read stories of what it was like to work in these assembly plants early on, conditions were really bad. People died due to the rough nature of working in these plants sometimes. However, what I believe the UAW ended up doing over time is it deprived the big three automakers of their finances, and that resulted in a lower quality of product through their vehicles during a couple decade stretch, and that's partially how Toyota and Honda eventually overtook the big three worldwide, as none of the Toyota and Honda plants in the US have membership with the UAW. There's also many stories of union workers at these plants sitting around and playing cards while on the job. Now, I'm not making the assumption that all members of the UAW are doing that on the job, but there is clear documentation of that being the case at times over the years. So basically, the UAW over time abused their power in fighting for higher wages, that eventually the big three could no longer afford to have as many manufacturing jobs as there once used to be. So the effect that the union had on at least the state of Michigan is it encouraged the big three automakers to move manufacturing into southern states where the union had not reached yet. And you also had the NAFTA agreement that made it cheaper to manufacture parts in Mexico. So that's the main reason as to why there are so many abandoned auto plants in Detroit and Flint, along with the suburbs, and why you see so many auto manufacturing plants down south that are still in operation. Well, we could go on forever talking about Detroit's problems over the years, and I'm sure some of you will say in the comments for this video,
You never talked about the race riots, you never talked about the crime or the corruption.
listen, I've talked about nearly every issue in depth that Detroit has seen over the years throughout individual videos in my Detroit playlist, and that is linked down below. Alright, so now we're going to talk about where we are, and where we are is in a neighborhood that's called the Aviation Subdivision. This neighborhood is unique because half of it is in Detroit and the other half is in Dearborn. It's bounded by Joy Road, Schaefer Highway, Wyoming, and Warren Avenue, and through here, the city limit line is Tireman Avenue. Along with that, smack dab in the middle of this neighborhood is a 7-way intersection. Most of these homes that stand here today were built throughout the 1950s. Now, I can't show it in this video due to copyright reasons, but a look at a website called Historical Aerials shows that homes were indeed being constructed here in the 1950s. It's a cool website to look at in your free time. Anyway, historians are conflicted on where the name of the Aviation Subdivision originated from. Some say that this land was an old airfield that was owned by Henry Ford, with the diagonal streets of Littlefield Boulevard and Esper Boulevard being where the landing strips were located. Others say that Henry Ford built this subdivision to be a place for his employees to live. I could really only find one article on the neighborhood when I did some digging, and even the author of this article, David Sands, had a hard time finding out the origins of this neighborhood when he published this article back in 2016. Eventually, Sands found out that this land was acquired by a real estate developer named Robert Oakwood in 1921, hence the name Oakwood Boulevard, and that this land indeed was used as an airstrip for Henry Ford before then. It was called Morrow Airfield, and it was used by Ford up through World War I. The name Morrow comes from Lieutenant Carl Morrow, who died during a Detroit air show. When it comes to the economic stats for the Aviation Subdivision, it's actually pretty impressive when you compare it to the rest of Detroit. This neighborhood isn't near as depleted as some other Detroit neighborhoods are. About 3,800 people live here, and the median household income is $67,000 per year. 14% of adults 25 and older hold a bachelor's degree or higher, and the median value of owner-occupied housing units is $94,000. Which is a pretty low number, but once again, when you compare it to the rest of Detroit, it's almost twice the value of the median Detroit home. So it just depends on how you want to look at it. From here, I skip to a part where I head southeast on Littlefield through the Aviation Subdivision. So currently we're heading south, but once we turn the corner up here, we'll be heading in a diagonal direction, and once we're on it, technically we'll be on what used to be a landing strip for Henry Ford's airport before 1920. Kind of neat. And now we're heading north on Oakman Boulevard, which once again is named after Robert Oakman, who was a real estate developer in Detroit back in the day, and he acquired this property that the Aviation Subdivision sits on today back in 1921. All right, so now back to where we were, as the Aviation Subdivision in Detroit is a part of the larger 48228 zip code, which does not leach into Dearborn at all. It's only in Detroit. But this zip code is home to 57,000 people, and the median household income is $31,000 per year. 11% of adults 25 and older hold a bachelor's degree or higher, and the median value of owner-occupied housing units is $39,000, while the poverty rate is 39%. And those numbers are pretty typical for what you'll see throughout any large residential area in Detroit. And you can see that the Aviation Subdivision is a lone bright spot for this zip code in Detroit. And for now, we're going to continue heading east along Tireman to continue to see what this area of the city looks like. And as we turn down this residential side street here, you'll see a lot of larger brick homes, but you'll see that a lot of them have become vacant over the years and have fallen into major disrepair. And throughout this neighborhood, you can just see that it's a continuation of a good amount of homes that have fallen into disrepair, to put it nicely. And as we turn the corner here and head onto Northfield Street, you have a really interesting looking old apartment complex that is now abandoned. Well, with that said, I continued my drive around this area of Detroit, and you can go ahead and check out my second channel, which is linked down below, to find a video on all of the lost footage from this area of the city that I filmed and didn't include in this video on my main channel. With that said, I end the video here, and if you enjoyed this video, make sure to drop a like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already, as doing all of those things helps these videos destroy the evil monster that is the YouTube algorithm. Also, make sure to hit that notification bell and select yes, so that you can be notified every time that I upload a new video. If you enjoyed this video, then you might enjoy checking out some of the featured playlists on this channel. Videos with amazing insights on other places like what you saw here can be found in my Detroit playlist, my American Hoods playlist, or in my Michigan playlist. Last but not least, if you can't get enough of me on here, you can always go follow me on my other social media accounts, and those links are below. We'll see you next time. Peace!